AlsalamAlykum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I've been into apologetics for 2 years now, and the top one argument that I've seen against Islam, I'll be refuting it in this video, I'll be explaining it for people. And basically, the top one argument against Islam, which is the age of Aisha radiallahu anha, may Allah be pleased with her, with the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. We're gonna go through the hadith that speaks about this age of marriage. First of all, this hadith is authentic. Nothing is wrong with the hadith. Fully authentic. Whoever tells you this hadith is not authentic, he's wrong about that. The Prophet, peace be upon him, married her when she was 6 years old, and she consummated his marriage when she was 9 years old. So the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, married Aisha, may Allah be pleased with her, at the age of 6 and consummated at 9 when she was mature. So first of all, before I even get into this even more and explain her age for people, because that's why I'm making this video, I'll be going into Christianity, because if Christianity think it's awful for marrying a 9-year-old, which I'm going to explain in a bit, therefore they have to be ashamed of their Bible. And I'll be getting into the Bible and showing stuff in the Bible before I get there. Alright? For example, you can see in the Catholic Encyclopedia, for example, that it is possible that Mary gave birth to Jesus at the age of 13 or 14. It is possible that Mary gave birth to her son when she was about 13 or 14 years of age. Alright? How do we know that? From the age at which Hebrew maidens become marriageable. There's no historical document that tells us about that, but there's a possibility, a very high possibility, that she gave birth at this age. And if she gave birth at this age when she was married to Joseph, probably before that. Point number one. Point number two, we're going to take a look at number 31, 17 to 18. Now kill all the boys and kill, that was a divine command from God to Moses in a war. Now kill all the boys and kill every woman who has slept with a man, but save for yourself every girl who has never slept with a man, which is, in other words, the virgins. Save for yourself the virgin girls who never slept with a man. That's what the verse is saying. It's speaking about captives, because in verse 19, on the third and seventh day you must purify yourselves and your captives. Speaking about taking captives as virgin, you kill the woman, the non-virgin woman, you kill the boys, but you save for yourself as captives the young girls who's virgins. That is insane. And then in Deuteronomy 21:10 to 14, it explains the captive woman that you take. When you go to war against your enemies and your Lord your God delivers them into your hand, and you take captives. If you notice among the captives a beautiful woman and you're attracted to her, you may take her as your wife. You're gonna bring her to your home. You're gonna shave her head, trim her nails, put aside her clothes, and then it says, after she has lived in your house and mourned her father and mother for a full month, then you may go into her. All right. Here, this verse, it speaks here about, if you notice among the captives, a beautiful woman. Woman here used in the Greek, which is Aisha. Aisha means female, not young woman, not virgin, not young virgin, as even Saint Augustine says. The Hebrew used here is not specifying an age, any age of woman. Here it says in the definition, a woman, wife, female, woman, opposite of man, because there is no age in this verse. There is no specific age in this verse. We see also the Bible allows grape. I don't want to say the word, it's so bad in the verse. If a man happens to meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and grapes her and they are discovered, he shall pay her father 50 shekels of silver. He must marry the young woman, for he has violated her. He can never divorce her as long as he lives. If you meet a virgin who is not pledged to be married and then you force her and lie with her, as even you guys can read the Septuagint of this verse, which is the translation of the Greek from the Hebrew, and they are discovered after you grape her, you're going to pay her father 50 shekels, and she's going to be forced to marry you forever. That is not good at all. We can also see that some Christian scholars, such as Ron Graham, he agrees upon that Rebecca married Isaac at the age of 3. He speaks about the biblical facts as evidence, but then he goes out in the here in the end, he says Rebecca would be 3 when the marriage took place. The same, for example, for Rashi's commentary on Genesis 25:20. He also speaks about pretty much the same thing in the end. He says, at the time period Rebecca was born, and he waited until she was fit for marriage 3 years and he married her. We can also see this as an example. Another example is that there is no particular age in the Bible for marriage. The Bible does not specify any particular age of requirement for a person to be married. Rather, it speaks in general terms of marriage being for those who are grown up. Alright? There's no specific age in the Bible for marriage. Both the language and culture of the Bible strongly support the idea that puberty, at bare minimum, is a condition that must be met before becoming someone's spouse. So this website is saying, in the Bible, the age of marriage is maturity. There's girls who get mature at the age of 6. Back in the day, there were girls that get mature at the age of 3, so therefore the Bible allows 3-year-old marriage. We can see this as an example. I'm going to have a very, very nice special video regarding this topic alone, because there's some Christians that use verses from the letters of Paul as that about the age of marriage, finishing puberty. I'll be going through this in another video. I'll be refuting it by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So now we're going to get to the age of Aisha. May Allah be pleased with her. I'll be explaining it in short terms, and then I'm going to go into some evidences and some stuff that's going to support me. First of all, it was culturally okay. This marriage was culturally okay. That is what the culture, that was the culture. Back in the day, people would get physically mature and then they would just get married right away. There were even marriages before maturity. And the reason, I'll go through this. For example, the age of expectancy, back in the day, at Arabia, for example, the age of expectancy was 20 to 40 years. There were no universities, there were no schools back in the day. So there's no schools, no universities, you don't have to finish your degree. You will get physically mature early because there's scientific evidence that back in the day, any scientist would agree with me. As scientific evidence, girls would get physically and mentally mature early. And one of the reasons is the hot weather back in the day. Girls would get physically mature early, no schools, no universities, the age of expectancy is low. So therefore, the culture was like that. The culture was, you finish puberty, or even before puberty, you're just going to get married right away. There's no reason to wait. There's absolutely no reason to wait back in the day. And by the way, the morality that God gave us and put into us, I think it's called the objective morality, that God gave us is sexual intercourse at the time of puberty. That is the morality that God gave us, is sexual intercourse at the time of puberty. That's the morality that God gave us. So I'll repeat it one more time for the last time. The age of maturity was early at the time. Girls would get physically mature early. No schools, no universities, no time to wait, no reason to wait, low age of expectancy. The culture back then is when you hit puberty, or even before puberty, you're just going to get married right away. There's no reason to wait. And even so, here's my open challenge for Christians. Any Christian who would show me one enemy of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. The enemies of the Prophet accuse him of everything. They accused him of very, very bad stuff. They called him, for example, a witch, for example. They called him bad names. No enemy of the Prophet Muhammad said anything about this marriage. No one's commented on this marriage at all. And this, I'm waiting for the evidence. There is absolutely no evidence for anyone that was against this marriage. And a brother actually sent me this file. I can barely read it. But back at the end it says, essentially based upon biological development, set it at the age of 12 or 14, but continue to set absolute minimum at 7. It's speaking about the age of consent back in the day. It was at 7, 12, or 14. You guys could read this file as well. Brother sent me this file a long time ago. So now I'll go, for example, here with some evidences about what I have spoken of. In 1800s in Delaware, the state of Delaware, the age of consent was 10 years until 1871, when it was lowered to 7 years. The age of consent into the state of Delaware was 7 years old. The culture that I was speaking about. For example, we're going to take a look at the child brides for kings. At the age of in the 8th century, they were married at the age of 16, 12. Married at the age of 12, 3, 7, 11, 12, 9. We can see marriages at the age of 12 again, 16, 15, 9, 11, another 9, 8, 12, 11. We can see, look at that. That's the culture. Everyone is getting married at the age of 13. That is another evidence that was the culture. I have this website here. Data from the skeletal remains suggests that in the Paleolithic, woman maturity occurred at the age of 7 and 13, early sexual menstruation being a trade-off for reduced life expectancy. Another example in the countries back then, we can see in Russia, the age of marriage was 13. After 1991, it was 14, from 16 to 14, and then it was raised to 14 again. We can see, for example, in the United Kingdom, the age of consent for marriage was 12. In France, they don't have anything for France. Netherlands, the age of consent was 12. They would get married at the age of 12. In Norway, it was 15 to 16. Like, for example, nowadays, it's 18. So therefore, are you going to call all those pedophiles, for example? You can see Kenya. It's debated, but consent was 18 or 16. In 2006, in 2006, in 2006 here as well, it was 12 and 13 and 14. And for example, the United States in the 19th and the 20th century, in Delaware, the age of consent was 10 years old and lowered to 7 years old. In 1880, 37 states had an age of consent of 10 years, and 10 states had an age of consent as 12 years, and Delaware maintained an age of 7 years as a age of marriage. In the 19th century, for example, of a Christian feminist reform groups began to advocate raising the age of consent to 16. See, by the time the age of consent was getting higher, Hawaii, for example, the age of consent was 14, and Georgia was raised from 14 to 16 in 2001. Look, by the time it's getting raised and raised and raised, by the time we can see this. And Kentucky law was 16 years old, for example. And also, we can see that the age of expectancy in the 7th century was 20 to 40 years, as I've spoken about as well. So, I'm going to summarize everything here. We can see in the Bible, if the Christians are going to talk about the age of Aisha radiallahu anha, for example, we have more word stuff than marrying a 9-year-old. We have grape in the Bible. We have captives where you kill. I've went through this as well. I've already went through this. I'm not going to repeat my words again. As well as I've explained the age of Aisha, why the culture was like that, and my challenge is still there to find me one enemy of the Prophet who criticized the age of Aisha. If you can't find me, therefore it was morally okay at the time, and that is how it was. There is absolutely no reason to go against this age of marriage. And also I forgot to mention something that I had to say in the video itself, that the Prophet Muhammad did not marry Aisha because he wanted to marry her. That was a divine command. Aisha was not like the other women. She narrated thousands and thousands and thousands of narrations of hadiths. She wasn't a normal human. She was mature already. Aisha was unlike a lot of other women, for example. That is something that also I would like to add as well. That is also a divine command, not the Prophet Muhammad wanted it. The wives of the Prophet, they were all divine commands. That was today's video. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.